Did you think becoming a world-class music producer would be easy? I did, but it took me 3 decades of sessions in studios all over the world to understand what separates the best producers from anonymous amateurs. So to help you become a world-class producer yourself, here are 24 lessons I learned the hard way. Lesson number 1. So I built my skills and reputation in London through my 20s, but once I had an international client base, became a dad, and realized our industry was changing, we moved to Montreal for a better lifestyle and cheaper warehouse space where I could build my dream studio. I got obsessed with making my facility as good as the great rooms I'd come up in London. For years, all my spare time went into making the studio better. From researching cables to hand-building analog outboard. Whenever I wasn't producing or mixing a session, I would be reorganizing gear, rewiring patch bays, hunting for the perfect setup. Now, this crept up gradually, but I eventually started noticing the more gear I put in there, the harder I was finding it to actually enjoy making music. Taking a full production from a writing session to a finished mix became this painful grind. There were too many details to remember, gear that would break, software that would crash. And my dream studio turned into a vortex of writer's block and self-doubt, where, without realizing it, I began avoiding the real creative work. I'd just loop up 8 bars and sit there fiddling with plugins for hours, then convince myself that the song wasn't working because I needed that latest piece I just read about in K-pop. And after years, I finally realized I was playing a stupid game. I was amassing a collection of stuff to compensate for my insecurities instead of focusing on finishing as much music as possible. That's why lesson number 1 is focus on your discography, not your collection. Measure your success as a producer not by how much gear you have, but by how many records you've finished. The finished music you make is a much more powerful proof of your credibility than how many vintage instruments you own. Lesson number 2. I'm sure you know that craving for unlimited time and freedom to explore every possibility a song could ever want. But I've seen countless artists and producers lost in the mirage of infinite ideas. They get paralyzed by options, constantly second-guessing themselves, and their hard drives become graveyards of unfinished music. Lesson number 2 is your studio time may be unlimited, but your objectivity isn't. The most valuable tool in the world for producers isn't vintage synths or tasty outboard, it's objectivity. It's your instinct. Because you can finish a record with almost no gear, but you can't finish a record with no clue. So defend your objectivity with every fiber of your being. Learn to gauge how objective you are in every moment, and design your creative system to preserve objectivity at every stage. Lesson number 3. Okay, tell me if you can relate to this one. I'm totally committed personally to making every song for every album, for every artist I work with, an original, custom piece of world-class work. I don't want to make cookie-cutter crap. Now, at the start of my career as a programmer, editor, and engineer, I achieved this by just working insanely hard. 18-hour sessions, not leaving the studio for days at a time. I was always down to clown. But as my career expanded, my real-world responsibilities grew too, all while recording budgets and timelines were shrinking. To keep up, I couldn't just work harder anymore. There just weren't enough hours in the day. But the solution isn't to lower your standards and start making generic crap with splice loops. Being formulaic will kill your career before it's even started. Instead, you need to start developing creative leverage in the studio. That's why lesson number 3 is develop a personalized production system while rejecting musical formulas. So this is a huge subject, and it's what this channel is all about, really. Subscribe, by the way, but the TLDR is to reliably and consistently deliver a large quantity of high-quality original music, you're going to need to get very smart about how every component of your equipment, your technique, your mindset, and your outside life's activities and responsibilities work together to create the music and life you're proud of. Lesson number 4. The golden years of recording are so inspiring. There's iconic artists, classy songs, lush orchestration, legendary studios. What's not to love? Well, it's easy to forget that back then, studio time was so expensive that a typical session couldn't run more than 3 hours from empty tape to finished master. As a producer, you absolutely could not walk in without a plan and just see what happens. Instead, you'd be responsible for coordinating a small army. To prepare for the sessions, you'd have to find the right combination of lyricists, songwriters, artists, and A&R, then arrangers, copyists, and orchestral fixers, and the studio, of course. And on the day, you'd ensure the artists, the musicians, the conductor and performers, the engineer, and even assistants and maintenance staff all performed to their best so that you'd have a great mix to send to mastering, manufacturing, and distribution. As a producer, you would orchestrate a relay race of expertise to deliver the record. So lesson number 4 is understand the traditional roles and how they fit together. Times have changed, but this map is like your cheat code, regardless of the genre you're making, regardless of the size of your team. Even if, actually especially if you're working completely on your own, this proven structure gives you all the tools to listen clearly and act effectively for every stage of your own productions. Lesson number 5. Lesson number 2 urged you to defend your objectivity at all costs. But with that sharp objectivity working over time, you might just start noticing everything that's wrong with your song. Now, this is an empowered moment for seasoned professionals who know how to move forward, but amateurs get overwhelmed and lock up because you just don't know where to start. And that's why lesson number 5 is important. You already understand that objectivity is your most powerful tool, but it only works when you pair it with your most powerful resource, which is momentum. Now, momentum grows when you just focus on one stage at a time in your production. Get it as good as you can and then move on to the next, then the next, then the next. And before you know it, momentum will carry you. You'll be flying, having the time of your life, riding that creative wave. Which is where lesson number 6 comes in. On the control room wall of almost every classic band session is a whiteboard with a simple grid, song names along the top, and the instruments down the side. At a glance, you can see what you've finished and what you need to do next. If the drums and bass are done on that song, perfect moment to do guitars. And no point recording backing vocals if you don't even have the backing track down. Lesson number 6 is that if you want to grow a deep discography of resonant world-class music, it really is as simple as knowing what to do next, and by extension, what you cannot do until your foundations are in place. Lesson number 7. Okay, so you can see how working through a simple whiteboard of the parts you need is really helpful for your production. But what if you are not a down-the-middle guitar, bass, drums band? A grid on your wall stops being an option. Or what if you're deep into recording backing vocals, but you're not sure if you've missed any details? Do you tick the box or not? Well, this lesson seems so simple, so basic, that amateur producers always miss it. Lesson 7 is listen to your work in progress, from start to finish, once while taking notes. Then methodically work through your notes in order. Repeat this process until you don't hear any more notes. Congratulations, you're done. Lesson 8. Let's get into some details here, because for lesson 7 to work, and 2, and 5, you have to be objective enough to clearly hear what the song needs. I remember late nights getting angry that my speakers couldn't go louder. I was confused and desperately searching for inspiration, but the only thing I got was ringing in my ears. If you're serious about having a great discography to show for all your work in the studio, you need to embrace lesson 8, which is listen less to hear more. Anytime you feel your objectivity slipping, anytime you lose touch with your instinct, it's time to step back and give your ears a chance to reset. While this happens, your subconscious will process that sonic puzzle you're grappling with. Whether you get an early night's sleep, go for a walk, or even mode switch to a different role in your production process, you're creating a chance to hear the song fresh so that it becomes obvious how to move forward again. Lesson 9. Many years ago, I had to walk off an album I was co-writing and co-producing. And I was devastated because I'd sunk a year of my life into trying to build something with this artist. We kept making one big mistake over and over, and I wish I could go back in time to fix it. See, we were obsessed with one of the biggest songs in our scene at the time and constantly referencing it during production sessions. Now, you think, oh, I'm going to inspire myself. You're going to give yourself a clear target to move towards. But your brain just starts obsessing about all the differences between your two songs, the things your production does not have. And we wound up going sideways, even backwards as a result. Lesson number 9 is the fastest way to sabotage yourself is with one great reference track. Because if you do that, you destroy your objectivity. You crowd out the space your own music needs to grow, and you even undermine your belief in yourself. If you want to get inspired during a session, do it properly. Listen to music from a ton of different artists and make sure to step outside of your genre too. This way, your brain will expand. Options will open up because you're creating like this blue sky of possibilities instead of trapping yourself in a tunnel of direct comparison. Lesson 10. Now, we all want to make the best records possible. And it's natural to think that the more we add into a song, the better it's going to be. But this is a terrible illusion. Amateurs haven't learned lesson 10. Complexity is not the same as quality. More often than not, a complex production is a sign that foundational decisions haven't been made. You just wind up trying to compensate with like more stuff. And that's when you find yourself caught in the mixing tutorial rabbit hole, convinced that if you just smash your layer cake through Soothe and God Particle, you're finally gonna love it. Andy Benoit famously said, "Geniuses prosper not by deconstructing intricate complexities, but by exploiting unrecognized simplicities." Lesson 11. Now, Albert Einstein has some brilliant quotes. From "the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge but imagination," to "life is like riding a bicycle. To keep your balance, you must keep moving." You'll find a goldmine from him to apply to producing music. But probably my favorite one is this. Now, it's too long to read out, but it illustrates its own point so perfectly. Because this profound idea of Einstein's remained totally obscure until a musician distilled it down to as simple as possible, but no simpler. These 7 words are our like guiding beacon in the sky for everything we do. From the shape of our arrangements, to the clarity of our lyrics, to the elegance of our songwriting, and of course, how we personalize our studio systems. Everything benefits from being as simple as possible, but no simpler. Lesson number 12. Now, in my career, I've mixed a vast number of records produced by other people. And once you've mixed thousands of songs, you realize it doesn't really matter which of the cabinet mics winds up in the final mix, or if that warm polysynth was Japanese or American. Now, of course, you'll notice the difference if you A/B them on their own, but because they serve the same role in the song, the differences don't really matter once you're performing your final mix. Lesson number 12 is to obsess over roles, not model numbers. Do you need something warm and wide, fast and spiky, solid, airy? Defining the role of a part in your production, then manually dialing it in and performing it is like 97% of the result. Lowering the filter and speeding up the envelope will make way more of a difference than whether your synth is a Juno 6, 60, or 106. You're going to build your discography so much faster when you focus on how to fulfill the role the song needs using whatever you have on hand. Lesson 13. Okay, when I was 16 years old, I sold my mountain bike to buy a used Fostex 4-track cassette recorder. And it took me months of flailing in the dark on my own just to figure out that the first step towards my recordings not sounding like total utter trash was as basic as recording a metronome to tape and using a digital tuner with my guitars. A consistent timing and tuning reference is like the preschool level of this lesson, which I urge you to elevate to the level of Nobel Prize winning scientist. Lesson number 13 is it is impossible to overstate the importance of timing and tuning for a great record. Hearing this stuff is infinitely more important than like hearing compression. And getting these details right will improve your mix way more than $1 million collection of outboard gear, and it will put you ahead of 99% of producers on the planet. Lesson number 14. Okay, in lesson 10, we talked about how complexity is not the same as quality, and this is an important cousin to that lesson. Now, recently I mixed an album for a young producer, and almost every song had well over 100 parts. And I remember the final 8-bar peak of one song had literally 39 new layers coming in at once. And I know their intention was to create a wall of sound, but they hadn't yet learned lesson 14, which is that you need space to get size. Your record will sound way bigger with fewer parts working together in the right way. Lesson 15. During a recent podcast interview, I was asked what my advice would be for a producer whose career growth had stalled. And the host seemed surprised by my take on this because I think producer is as broad a word as athlete. And there's no point practicing three-pointers if you're trying to win the gold in downhill skiing. But because the word producer is so broad, it's so vague these days, when you try to follow all the advice you find online, it's like practicing 50 different sports and winning nothing. So lesson 15 is lock in on the kind of producer you want to be. Define the type of work, the type of artist, type of process that's for you. Are you making type beats for sale? Are you wrangling punk bands? Are you collaborating with solo artists? There's infinite room to explore within your chosen field. And it's so much easier to improve when you have this clarity. But there's no point putting on swimming speedos and then running out onto the football pitch. Lesson 15. I got obsessed with records when I was a teenager living in the South Island of New Zealand. Back then, pre-internet, it took months for music press to arrive by boat from the UK and the USA, and sometimes as long again for the records to actually show up on our shelves. So it was only like natural for me to idolize the people making this music, imagining them as like these supremely gifted demigods. I was shocked and then inspired once I started working in person with some of my heroes a few years later. And that's because of lesson 15. Nobody is inherently any better or worse than you. We're all just normal human beings at our own stage of our own paths. The most iconic artists are no different to you. All they did was let their natural interests and obsessions guide them. And the greatest engineers and producers are no different to you. They just followed through on their commitment to their craft. And you can too. Lesson number 16. A lot of developing producers and artists I talk to feel they can't get their music and careers going until like they're already an expert. If your anxiety spikes at the thought of making a fool of yourself on a session, ruining a song with subpar production, then please embrace this lesson. Questions are infinitely more powerful than answers. A question as simple as, what would happen if we mute the chords in verse 2 can open up a new world of possibility for a song. And a question as direct as, hey, what's this song really about? Can take you from a forgettable little ballad to heart-wrenching catharsis. Our buddy Albert Einstein said, I have no special talents, I am only passionately curious. So letting go of needing to know what's going to happen before you even start, and just getting curious about how things can evolve once you get going isn't just the fast track to finishing. It's also guaranteed to make producing records so much more fun. Lesson number 18. Okay, this one is a real paradox of production, and it can happen at any stage. But one perfect example is this mistake that I used to make over and over when I was mixing for years. So whenever I'd be building a mix, I'd start by going all in on the drums. I'd like go deep. I'd take hours and they would sound insane. They're so big, they're so powerful, they're so edgy. I'd be feeling like this renegade genius. But then you start adding in the rest of the multi-track and it all collapses. The instruments are fighting, and there's no space for the vocals, and by the time everything is in, those earth-shattering drums just feel tiny, they feel pokey, they feel lame, honestly. So, lesson number 18 is it will always sound different once everything is in together. Whether you're mocking up parts in a writing session, deep in production, or pulling a final mix together, just move quickly. Sidestep the rabbit holes until you've sketched out a complete picture. Lesson 19. What's beautiful about our work is that there's always more to learn, more to explore, more to discuss. It is an infinite game. But unlike sending human beings into orbit, we don't have to do everything perfectly to do our job well. Lesson 19 is making records is not rocket science. It's as simple as listen, notice what could change, try the change, and if you prefer it, keep it. If you don't, undo it. If it gives you a new idea, try that one. Repeat. Lesson number 20. One of the Prodigy's biggest songs had been languishing on Liam's hard drive for years. He'd been experimenting with it live and in the studio, and when we opened it up during my sessions on Invaders Must Die, I wound up remembering their manager playing me interludes from the band's live set, and a spark went off. That is when the glockenspiel hook was flown into Omen. And suddenly, the song clicked. We finished fast, and the rest is history. So lesson 20 is never judge how long it takes to finish a song. Trust the process. Ignore that internet chatter that says you'll know in the first 10 minutes. And likewise, ignore the feeling that a song is only good if you've slaved over it for years. Every album has some songs that take weeks of struggle and some that arrive in a handful of hours. One isn't better than the other. It's just part of the process. And once your music reaches your audience, that's all completely irrelevant anyway. Lesson 21. So when I first started trying to make instrumentals for top-line writers, I spent 3 weeks polishing tiny details on this one song, but nobody ever wrote to it, and I cannot blame them because it was awful. So here's a question. Do you think it would have become good enough if I'd worked on it for another 3 weeks? Back then, I was a devoted perfectionist. You get all the details perfect, then you have a perfect record at the end of it, right? But that changed for me during Björk's album Volta on her sessions with Timbaland. The legendary Jimmy Douglas was engineering, while Danger Hands was Tim's creative partner. Now, fun story, Timbaland and Björk worked exactly opposite schedules. Midnight for Tim, noon for Björk. And they just kept missing each other. But Jimmy, Danger, and I would be hanging out in the studio the entire time. And that gave me a window into a different way of working. Around the clock, Danger had headphones on, cranking out like 5 beats a day. Then Tim would come in at night, chat for a little bit, put on headphones, cook up something again in like 10 minutes, record it, and then leave. And that's when I realized lesson 21. Quantity is the path to quality. I did the math. Tim was making hundreds of ideas a year. Danger was making thousands. And in a similar time, I would make maybe like 5. So the ratio of music that was used, though, that connected with the audience might only be a handful out of every 100. But Tim and Danger found the music that connected by relentlessly making more every day. So the lesson is get serious about the quantity, the number of shots on goal, more than trying to make one shot perfect. It's not about the perfect production, but creating the opportunity for as much music to flow through you as possible. By the way, I could actually make 50 videos about what I learned from that session, and there's some zingers I will be sharing with my email list, so please do subscribe if you're into that kind of thing. There's a link below. Lesson 22. There's a lot of chat out there about making a beat in 10 minutes, or how you should just make a ton of music and don't overthink it. And of course, that is totally valid, but unless you're also refining and evolving your sensitivity, skills, and systems, your music isn't really going to improve. So lesson 22 is obsess over quality and craftsmanship. Take pride in the details, the precision, the fit and finish of your work, and ensure you're always improving while delivering reliably. You'll build a reputation as someone who can elevate a record. And the cumulative effects of those small details will make your music stand out. Lesson 23. I used to suffer from this a lot at the start of my career, and I'm constantly talking to new producers, mixers, and artists who are in the same trap. In our quest to make a record perfect, we don't realize what makes them special. And we mislabel character and rough edges as imperfection, polishing them away until our music is like bland. It's symmetrical, it's just average. Lesson 23 is a real mind bender, but it's a truth that shall set you free. Perfection does not exist. Perfection is an illusion. It is an imaginary construct of the human psyche. Perfectionism is not a virtue. It's our ego's defense mechanism to avoid judgment from others by always having one more tweak. And it makes us unable to truly hear the music as it is. Now, an amateur might stress out that imperfections are ruining their record, but a great producer knows that's where beauty and character are found. Lesson 24. Hey, have you noticed that these last few lessons are starting to contradict each other? Like, how can you obsess over quality, but shun perfectionism? How can you work fast while being okay with the fact that every song is going to take the time it needs? So it's time for lesson 24. There are no absolute truths. Embrace the contradictions. Making a ton of music that resonates with your ideal audience and attracts your ideal opportunities will require you to let go of everything you think you know, over and over again, sometimes within a single production. And once you can hold two opposing ideas in your head at the same time and still move your record forward, that's when you're embodying the wisdom of a great producer. Push yourself and your production as far as you can, then be willing to let go. There are no objective measures of quality in art. We're only here to touch the hearts of our listener in the moment. Okay, so now that you've learned all these lessons, you're ready to go deep into a production system rabbit hole. So click this next video for a detailed breakdown of the key elements of a drum production workflow that will help you get 3 days work done in 3 hours.